Hello everyone. As we saw in the previous video for this lecture, we talked about the different types of motion, and depending on what you're working with, what your material is, you would be choosing either shape tweening, you would be choosing classic tweening, or you would be using motion tweening. In this movie, we're going to talk about motion tweening in a little bit more detail. So to do that, let's go ahead and create an object. And as you notice, I'm simply going to use the oval tool without choosing to create an actual object, so that this is only a fill. So it's just basically a vector fill. So if I click it, I'm selecting that. Remember, that is the substance that looks like Play-Doh. That's what I want right now. So let me go ahead and place that on this side. And I'm going to place it in the center of the stage. So to do that, I am going to click on the Align tool that is on the right-hand side over here under these tools, under these icons. Then I'm going to align to stage, make sure that that is set. You can turn it on and off as you need. Then I'm going to center both vertically and horizontally. Now that is just like I said a second ago. If I go to the properties, it's a shape. So it's nothing that I can actually animate through motion animation or motion tweening. So I need to convert that into an actual symbol. So to do that, remember, you go to the modify drop down, and then you go to convert a symbol. Now, convert a symbol is through the drop down, but from now on, I will be using the shortcut F8. So the F8, the function key on your keyboard, F8, will allow you to create a symbol. Let me go ahead and close the advanced options for this. For now, we don't need to get into those, but I do want to give this a name, and I'm going to call it circle. And I'm going to make it a graphic symbol for now, which is all I need. And I am going to click OK. Now, doing that makes this item a symbol. It also adds it to my library. Remember that. And I can keep on dragging instances of that symbol onto the stage if I need to. Let me select them all and delete them. If I select the original symbol, the one that I have on the stage, and go to the properties window, you'll notice that I see that this is a circle. It's an instance of circle of that symbol that's on the library. So it's an instance of circle. It is a graphic, and you'll notice that this is a drop down. So I can change how that instance of that movie clip is going to be behaving in the actual on the stage, while it's on the stage. So I can change, instead, if this is a graphic and I create it as a graphic in the library, I can make this specific instance behave as something else within the stage. Now, I usually don't do that, and I don't know of anyone who does, to be honest with you. If you need a graphic, you create a graphic. If you need a button, you will create a button. And if you need a movie clip, you will create a movie clip. But that symbol will retain the properties that basically you created it for, and that's the reason why you create the specific type. However, you have the ability to change, to switch around the options by clicking on that drop down. Now, let's go ahead and, with that setup, let us go ahead and create the actual animation on the stage. You'll notice that I only have the original one frame at the beginning of my layer. Let me double click the name of that layer, and I'm going to call it motion. Hit return so that it takes. And notice that I don't have any extra frames. Therefore, my movie clip, my actual program right now, is only one frame long, which means that if I hit play, nothing happens because it's only one frame. Now, if I want to extend it, in the past, we've been extending by simply selecting whatever frame we wanted to go to, and then pressing either F5 on the keyboard, or clicking on this drop down and saying I want to add frames, or I want to add another keyframe if you wanted to make a copy of that last keyframe, or add a blank keyframe if you wanted to create another empty keyframe to basically allow this frame to exist all the way from frame 1 all the way to right before the second empty keyframe. So we have options. However, you can go ahead and, like I said a second ago, select the frame and press F5, and that will extend all the frames from here all the way to whatever you have selected within the timeline, and it will give you, basically, that frame will last that long until you make changes, which means you need to introduce other keyframes. Remember, a keyframe is a point in time where something happens, where something changes. Something being transformation values, properties like scale, rotation, and so on. However, for motion tweening, it works a bit different. You can actually take advantage of this fairly easy. Based on the frame, on the FPS on the actual time base of the movie, of the program that you're creating, in our case it's 30 FPS, as we can see on the properties window, we can go ahead and right click that frame and go directly to create motion tween. When we do that, it will create 1 second by default of animation. It will extend that frame to 1 second, allowing you to basically create something at the frame 30 automatically. So it saves you a bit of time. In doing so, basically it tagged that, it did two things. It extended the frames for that particular layer so that I now have 30 frames. And it automatically tagged it to say, this is a motion tween that you're about to create. So with motion tween, remember from the previous video, we don't have to create a second keyframe. Changing the property that we plan to change on this object will automatically create a keyframe. However, let's say we wanted to introduce a new keyframe for this. How would we introduce a keyframe for motion tweening? Well, you can right click on that frame that you want to introduce it, and you can go to insert a keyframe. You will notice that for this option, you have options for the different properties that you can affect for that particular layer content. That means the properties of that layer content, they all can be animated separately. So you can animate position, scale, skew, rotation, and so on. You can even animate the filters. Most people that I know work, when they're working, they go for all. And there is really no foul on doing that. The only drawback on working and creating an all keyframe, meaning you tag the layer to be animated in all properties, is when you need to go back into the layer to do detail motion changes, which is what we're about to do. So if I select all, basically all of the different properties will be tagged to be visible to me on the graph where I am going to make the changes, where I'm going to be fine-tuning the motion. That can get busy. That can get visually busy, and real estate is at a premium in these programs. Therefore, my advice is that you target whatever properties you want to actually apply a keyframe to. In this case, let's say I just want to do scale. So I could just simply click scale, and you'll notice that nothing really changed in my shape, on my symbol on the stage. Sorry, but I do get a little diamond shape over here on frame 30. Remember that diamond indicates it's a motion tween keyframe. This diamond is the same concept as what we find in After Effects. So a diamond is basically like a rhombus shape, indicating that there's a frame, something is coming into that frame and something is about to leave that frame when the motion continues, if there were other keyframes downstream. So let's go ahead and make sure that I place my time marker on frame 30 so that I am affecting that frame there. And I said I was going to change the scale. So with that shape selected, I'm going to go and choose my free transform tool, and then I'm going to increase in size while pressing shift to constrain proportions. So as I do so, let me just go ahead and make it just this big, and you'll notice that when I play this back, I have animation. Now that animation as of now is linear animation, meaning it is playing at a constant rate of speed. And in the real world, things don't happen that way. Things either accelerate or decelerate to a specific point in time of change. So when you're working with keyframes and you want to create a semi-natural feel to the motion of items that you're animating, you should look into that concept that we talked about in the principles of animation. It was called slow in, slow out, which we actually call easing, meaning easy in or easy out of a frame. Those are the two concepts. That's the way we call them in motion graphics or in animation, in interactive animation. In regular animation, hand-drawn animation and so on, and such, it's called slowing in, slowing out. It's basically the exact same thing. So how do we access that? How can we modify this motion from linear to making it something that we can control? Let me go ahead and expand my timeline a bit upward and recenter my stage so that we see what we're doing. Now, to do that, we open up what we call the graphing editor in a program like After Effects. That is basically a visual representation of what the change in speed will be versus the amount of time that that change takes. So in order to do so, double click the layer that you want to affect anywhere. So if I double click it here, it opens up my graphing editor. Let me expand that even further so I see a little bit more. Let me recenter my stage, and you'll notice that that line represents the amount of change in the scale, as you can see over here, over time, over 1 second of time. So it, as you can see, is a straight line, which means it's linear. Now, details here. Under transform, had I chosen when I went to create the keyframe, the second keyframe, had I chosen to say insert a keyframe for all, or if I right click and go insert keyframe all, then I would on this side see keyframes for position, scale, skew, all of that would be available to me here. And so as you can see, it could get busy really fast. This is why I prefer to focus on creating keyframes as I go for the properties that I want to affect only. That is my personal preference, but most of the people that I know work with all the time because they find it to be easier. Now I find them spending a lot more time than I do when they have to go back and fine-tune keyframes, because they have so many things on the screen that they need to start closing and opening windows like such, or drop downs like this. And that, even though it might be just a simple click, when you add it up, it turns into hours worth of work that you are opening and closing windows. So that said, you can affect each one of the different dimensions on our graph, whether it's horizontal or vertical, X being horizontal, Y being vertical, or you can affect both of them by clicking on the actual scale label up here. So clicking on this one affects both of them, both of what I'm about to do, the EC ease in or EC ease out, or you can do it on a per axis basis. So let's go ahead and click on scale to affect both of them. And right down here, I'll say at ease. Now, I can go ahead and expand my view of this entire thing. Right now, it's looking at it as I was working as default. But if I want that graph to be a little bit more, if I want to see in more detail what the actual curve looks like, based on the amount of frames that I have selected, in this case, the 2 frames that I have selected here, frame 1 and frame 30, if I click on this little icon right here, it will expand my view to show me the entirety, the space that I have available in my timeline to expand that curve so that I can see it. This does not affect the length of your animation. Your animation is still 1 second long. As you can see, there's a time marker here saying 1 second. But what it did is basically made use of this little tool up here to expand the visibility of the graph so that you have better control if you so desire. So now let's go ahead and add some ease to this. So I'll click on the drop up, and you'll notice that this shows me a graph which says no ease, which means linear animation. If I want to make other animations, I can find presets here under, for example, simple. I can click on slow, medium, fast, and you'll notice that this starts fast and then slows down. It goes kind of flat. So that means the animation is changing rather fast at the beginning, and then it slows out as it goes out. You can also choose from stop and start, slow, start, fast, and then slow as it ends, medium. You can choose different options. You can choose something like bounce, for example, which would give you almost like a rubber hose anime, like bouncing animation. So those are pretty really nice things to work with, because it gives you a lot of flexibility in the way you're animating. And these are the defaults. Basically, these are some sort of templated animations that you have if you so choose to, and you'll notice that that's basically what's doing to the graph back there, is changing it. Now let me go ahead and go back to no ease. Then I'm going to slide down all the way to custom, and you'll notice that under custom, this will give me whatever graph. Since I was playing last time with this, I had created this customized layer, this customized curve. However, if I want to really customize my curve, I have the ability to click on any of the keyframes represented by these little squares on the graph, and you notice that I have a Bezier handle. So I can go ahead and modify the curve to my liking. You also notice that as I roll over the curve, I get the little pen tool with a plus, which indicates I can add points on my animation. So if I click on that, I have the ability to create curves that will affect the way my animation is played. I can also roll over the little keyframes and change their position to actually affect when they happen on the timeline. So it's extremely flexible when you use custom animations. However, most people that I know, when they custom animations, they usually do it because one of the templates doesn't provide by default what they need, and usually it ends up being that they want to enhance the EC ease in or EC ease out of a frame. So it's basically what they do. If you want to get rid of that particular point, just drag it, and you can hit the delete key on once you click it. Once you select it, hit the delete key and it'll go away. Now let me go ahead and modify this once again, and I'm going to make this fast out, EC is in, but I am going to exaggerate it so you can see that the motion is basically that you can see the actual motion happening here a lot more evident. So with that done, let me hit the return key so that it takes, or you can just go ahead and click somewhere else down here on the timeline so that it closes. You'll notice that my animation graph changed, and when I play this back, you will notice that my animation starts fast, and then slows down as it goes towards the outside, giving it more of a natural growth or a natural modification. The actual animation is a little bit more natural. The motion is a little bit more natural. So this is how you affect the layers properties for that particular animation, and by having access to this graphing editor that we can work with, which makes it a lot easier for us to control what things play back like. This, once again, is how you access the graphing editor for motion tweening. This does not apply to classic tweening, nor does it apply to shape tweening. In order to close the window so that we can continue working, simply double click the window once again. The window will collapse, and then you can return to setting up your workspace to whatever works best for you.